Hi guys, Joachim Reviews here, and I'm back with a podcast-style review for Doctor Who versus the Predator. Wait, no, I mean The Woman Who Fell to Earth. This episode was very much like Doctor Who versus the Predator. It was very creepy, very exciting, and of course it was Jodie Whittaker's first episode as the Doctor. We got our introduction to the new companions, Ryan, Yaz, and Graham, and we also briefly met Grace as well. Also, this review is going to feature complete spoilers. It's not going to include much editing either, because a few lifestyle changes. I'm now at uni. I'm at university, so if there's any background noise, I do apologise for that. I am going to try and remove as much noise as possible, but this is just going to be a more casual podcast style review, and it is going to be completely full of spoilers as well, because everybody saw this episode. This got a 8.2 million overnight viewing, which is absolutely amazing. And what did I think of this episode? I thought it was great. Jodie Whittaker has completely found herself as the Doctor. She completely knows who her Doctor is, and she knows the character's motivations, and it's just so ironed out already. It's like in the 11th hour, Matt Smith knew exactly who his Doctor will be. It's very exciting, very well thought out script as well. There were quite a few twists and turns, and your expectations kind of getting swerved a little bit as well, because they set up things and oh no, it's something different. With the recall coil, I think it was, and Tim Shaw, the villain, Tim Shaw. So yeah, I think it's just best to get completely into this. Cat out of the bag, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. I love her. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding her Doctor, and I don't really think it needs to be addressed anymore. I think she's kind of a bit tired of being known as the female Doctor. She's been hinting at that in interviews last week and just upcoming. So I do think it is time we stop referring to her as the female Doctor, because it is getting quite repetitive, I do think, and there is some things in the marketing that people are a little bit complaining about as well. But I'd say the marketing's been fine so far. I thought that the Glass Ceiling trailer was fine. I like the Glorious song. I think the trailers have been great. I really like how they've not revealed much, but I do think maybe we could have had some monster reveals in those trailers as well. But with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, I spotted two incarnations of the Doctor in her performance, and the rest was hair. There was a lovely little callback to what I deemed as Eccleston, and that was when she reformats Ryan's phone, and he says, "No, all my stuff's on there." Not anymore. That was a very Eccleston-like line. It's just very tough shit. I loved that bit. I also really liked when she's building the sonic screwdriver, because the Doctor's a scientist, and I think the Stephen Moffat implementation of the TARDIS making the sonic screwdriver completely takes away from the intelligence of the Doctor. And of course, who was the Doctor who built stuff? It was John Pertwee. He'd always get like these little knickknacks and make like these little time devices, like in the Time Monster, where even that it looked like it was made out of cutlery and a teacup. And with this sonic screwdriver, it was made with teaspoons, a crystal from the teleport device, and just like other little bits and knickknacks that she found around. And I really did enjoy that. I thought that was really great, because it did remind me instantly of John Pertwee. And John Pertwee's Doctor, of course, is so special to, I think, so many Doctor Who fans. So to see him lived on not only in Capaldi's era, but also this episode, I thought was absolutely fantastic. But the rest of Jodie's Doctor, it was completely hair. She's this really nice, smiley, optimistic Doctor, and it's not. She's not kind of arrogant. She's obviously the most intelligent person in the room, and you believe it. But she's also respectful of those around her, and you really feel like the thrill of the adventure. And I think that's what Doctor Who hasn't maybe had in a long, long time. It's always had that kind of adventure, but I think the viewer ourselves haven't been too excited. While now I think we are all completely on board after that first episode and excited to see what is going to come next Sunday as well. So it's these lovely little things that happen on screen, but they translate to the real world as well, as I guess what I'm trying to say. But yeah, Jodie Whittaker gets just so many thumbs up from me. I didn't have any issues with her. Of course, maybe some lines don't land. That never happens with the Doctor. It's like with Matt Smith with like the "Who the Man" line in the 11th Hour, which was made to intentionally be cringy. But yeah, some lines don't land. And some people complained about the tongue line. I liked the tongue line. I thought that was great. I think regeneration episodes are very, very fun. And of course, the story's going to be quite simple. And we'll move on to the story just a little bit, but I want to talk about the companions just now. So I think the standout for me in this episode is Ryan. Because I just felt like he had a very compelling story. Ryan is very different in the past because he actually has a real-world condition in dyspraxia. So that can mess with his cognitive function of just trying to function different things at once, like riding a bike, because you have to pedal, you have to steer, and you have to maintain your balance, along with looking around at the same time. So of course that kind of like overload your senses, and I think that added such a nice dynamic to the episode, and I'm sure it will add a lovely dynamic to the series going forward, and seeing him overcome these struggles. Yaz as well, I really enjoyed Jasmine. Mandip Gill played her pretty great, and I think her and Jodie Whittaker are kind of the closest on the set with each other, so it's really fun to see that. I'm sure we're going to see that friendship develop even more. And Graham as well. Graham played by Bradley Walsh, and Bradley Walsh acted his heart out. I know a lot of us maybe weren't too sure about him in this role, or in Doctor Who in general, but I think he more than proved himself completely, and massive kudos to Bradley Walsh. And what I really enjoyed about the companions is that they all had their individual motivations for wanting to travel with the Doctor, because Yasmin, you find out instantly that she desires more from her job. She's kind of, it's not dead end, but she's not getting anywhere. It's almost like that she's just seen as kind of a kid, essentially, even though she's an adult in a respected job. So it's obviously she desires more from life, and of course that would be the perfect click for her to eventually go and travel with the Doctor. We have Ryan, and Ryan, both metaphorically and literally, needs focus in his life, because of course his whole thing is him trying to focus on things, you know, like riding a bike and things like that. So I think that is super interesting, and it adds this really nice little depth, again, with what is metaphorical and what is literal, and of course that is going to translate to him eventually sticking around with the Doctor after she's kind of Ian and Barbara style kidnapped them. And Bradley Walsh as well, he was given a second chance at life by Grace, who was his cancer nurse. And I think the element of him having cancer, it's a very real world condition, and Doctor Who never really approaches these things. It's a hard-hitting topic. It was hard-hitting in the Torchwood episode, I think Dead Man Walking with Owen, when he was looking after that kid with cancer, and he gives that really uplifting kind of message. And I think that's what Bradley Walsh's character is going to do in this series. He's going to give that kind of uplifting message of, you know, there is life after when you think it's all over. I've watched this episode twice, and there are little things that rarely ties towards the end, because Grace unfortunately dies in the episode, which I think was a bit disjointing the first time I watched this, but I rewatched it again and I thought it was fine, and I do have my little kind of ideas for how I will, or how I would re-edit it, or maybe shoot the scene, because I would have had Grace die during the final confrontation with the main villain, because she dies after he's vanquished, and I kind of think that is it almost feels like, what are you doing this for? Because Jodie's came down quite safely. So I would have had her kind of fall during the confrontation, but we don't see that like hit the ground kind of thing, which I do think that was a fantastic little visual, almost metaphor with the cable hitting the ground. It really was very impactful. And I would have had the Doctor come down. I just went, right, gang, we did it, and then we see that Grace is on the floor, and it would be that heartbreaking moment, and it rarely was. But it maybe just in the wrong place of the confrontation, I do feel. But I think that her death definitely adds something further to the series. Because it's going to give, again, Bradley Walsh some meaning to his character. And it's just this emotional weight that Doctor Who has not had in a long time. No resurrections this time. It was a very almost real death, just this fall, and it almost kind of was like pathetic irony in a way with how Jodie Whittaker fell from the sky through the train, and Grace was the one who kind of looked after her and was just like, "Are you okay, love?" And just little things like this. So there was that kind of pathetic irony that was so sad. And I think Chris Chibnall did portray that perfectly with the funeral scene. It was like Remembrance of the Daleks, because we never actually see the aftermath of Doctor Who stories a lot. And I think one of the first ones, and mainly one of the only ones, was Remembrance of the Daleks with the funeral scene. And the Doctor's very mysterious and he's very respectful. And it very much felt like that because Jodie, well, the 13th Doctor, because I very much just consider her the Doctor and not Jodie Whittaker anymore. She stood in the back. She knew that it wasn't her place to kind of intervene, I guess. The curse of the Time Lords and all that. So she very much was very respectful, and it really was like this nice little callback. And it was just this nice, bittersweet ending to end the episode, and we will talk about the cliffhanger, but I just want to talk about the villain. And I mentioned previously that it was very much like Doctor Who versus the Predator with Tim Shaw, and I can tell that Tim Shaw, that was Jodie Whittaker maybe saying something in the script. I was like, oh, it sounds a bit like Tim Shaw, because if you say it in a Yorkshire accent, Tim Shaw, it sounds like Tim Shaw. So I would like to imagine that they kind of like added that little bit in last minute. So it'd be very interesting if they ever do like a confidential style series or maybe like a Doctor Who extra. I'm very looking forward to that, especially with this series, with how different it is. But with Tim Shaw, I thought he was a really nice villain. Of course, first episodes for Doctors don't usually have the strongest villains. The 11th Hours, the Atraxi, they're not really villains in the sense they're more space police. And I wouldn't call them really strong, but it's the mystery that ties it together. And I think there's a lot of mystery about what the overall plan of Tim Shaw is that kind of can take away from the more one-dimensionalness of the monster. And it is very nice that we can have a villain that is a villain. It's not a sympathetic villain, it's just a villain, and I think that is absolutely great, because I do think they kind of did ruin the Zygons by trying to make them sympathetic villains. They tried to do it with the Daleks, and it just doesn't really work. So again, I have no complaints with Tim Shaw. I thought he was threatening. He earned to be threatening as well. So when Jodie kind of undermined him with the Tim Shaw joke, he was already still scary. It didn't ruin his kind of character. So it was very careful, and I'm very interested to see the kind of like character play that will go on in this series, because he seems to understand everyone from the villain to the human characters as well. So that's something very exciting for this series as well. I've watched this episode twice, and honestly, I thought it was even better second time round, because I was a bit worried this episode didn't have. Well, I was a bit worried this episode wouldn't have the rewatch value that maybe 11th Hour does, but I can certainly say this episode really does have rewatch value. I watched this with my roommates, and one of them turned to me and went, "That is the greatest thing I've ever watched in my entire life," and I think that shows that Chris Chibnall has done his job really, really well. I saw a tweet last night, and it was by Ivan Kirby on Twitter, and he made this absolutely fantastic point. in the episode, we have a person with dyspraxia, a cancer survivor, and a say no to knives message, and he said that it doesn't feel like we're being bonked over the head with it, like in the Moffat era, and I completely agree. It felt completely natural and human. Everybody has their own struggles, and it's nice that Doctor Who is delving into that, and it didn't feel like this big sympathetic thing with a big orchestra going on in the background. It felt so natural. There was no bonking over their head with whatever they want us to know about these characters. It was so simple and so subtle. Even Jodie's I am the Doctor kind of moment, it wasn't a speech and it didn't have overpowering music that tell the viewer how to feel. It instead was music that complements the scene. And I can tell this series is maybe going to move away from the big grand speeches and more focus on these nice weighty lines, and a lot like the classic series would do. So I very much appreciate that as well. We also have a new theme, and the theme uses the original cuts of the Delia Derbyshire theme, and it works fantastically. I think we have got one of the greatest Doctor Who themes on our hands. I do plan to do a title sequences video, which will include the title sequence whenever that appears, which it should be next week. So that is when we can truly judge the new theme song. But overall, I think it sounds absolutely fantastic, and I'm so excited to see how it kind of delves into the intro, because the theme song is creepy, it's exciting, it's scary, and it's just got that immense mystery that Doctor Who rarely should have with its theme song. The Capaldi theme, I just don't like it anymore. I think it kind of fails as a theme song and being catchy. It's kind of a bit annoying, while this one, it's epic and creepy at the same time, and I think that's what describes Doctor Who completely. You know, the episode itself tonight was bloody scary. If I was 8 years old, I would have been cowering behind the sofa, and I think that is rarely what you want in a Doctor Who story, because Jodie Whittaker was doing these interviews and saying that the series was scary, and I was like, even though I was completely on the Jodie bandwagon, I was really excited for Series 11, I didn't quite buy that. Yet it was bloody scary, and it was this kind of horror that Doctor Who hasn't really had in a long, long time, and it's just the oncoming threat, and that was absolutely just beautiful to watch. I saw on Twitter some guy tweeted that his 8-year-old son looked at him and said, "Doctor Who is the scariest thing ever," and what more can you say? The cliffhanger, bloody terrifying as well, of them in space, stunning. The visual direction for this whole episode is just beautiful. There's honestly too much to talk about within 20 minutes. But that cliffhanger, I think one of the greatest Doctor Who cliffhangers ever, and I hope it isn't cheated, but it was just absolutely stunning and such a shock to watch. I'm very interested to see how they kind of get out of it as well. Because they don't have the switch either. How they can breathe in space, I imagine they're kind of in mid transition. So they're only just kind of materializing, or maybe it sucked the air from the room and that's quickly dispersing into space, and then they've got a few seconds to breathe, and somehow they'll end up on the planet in the next episode. But whatever happens will happen. It was a beautiful cliffhanger. It was shocking. I didn't expect the episode to end on a cliffhanger. If they have these Netflix-style cliffhangers each episode, I think this series is going to be so successful. Chibnall has looked at his market. He saw what's successful and what radiates with viewers. And it's those Netflix-style cliffhangers that make you binge watch that I think are so successful now. And I think that is a perfect way to end this kind of podcast style review. I'm going to try and do these almost every week, and we should have night thoughts as well come episode 5 for our mid kind of series discussion, as I did with Pertwee Smith 11 last year with series 10. And I think with series 11, we're in for such a ride. Welcome aboard Jodie Whittaker. Welcome aboard the rest of the team. Everyone was fantastic. And this episode, I give a 8.5 out of 10. I don't think it was as like this kind of style of story that 11th Hour was, that I think makes 11th Hour the best post-regeneration story, but it certainly is definitely up there in the best, and I think 8.5 is an absolutely solid rating. So I will see you next week for the Ghost Monument. Goodbye everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed. See you later. Goodbye.